like to read an order before we start. This meeting of the steering committee is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion. Have a second. Go ahead, Rachel.
Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes. Let's get to our agenda. The first thing on the agenda is approved minutes. Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, a copy of those minutes are located on your iPads, gentlemen. I have read through those minutes. I haven't found anything in particular, and if someone else has, I will make a motion to move their approval.
Second.
Commissioner McAdoo? Yes. Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes. Okay, next on the agenda is County Powers Relief Act. I'm going to hold this discussion up to 30 minutes if we need it. I will then call a recess and have our delegates come in, and then I will bring us back in session. What's before us is the County Powers Relief Act. As you know, we charge a development tax of $1,500. We have been given a proposal from legislators that we could opt out of the County Powers Act and go to $1 a square foot. Now, I'm going to let the mayor take this from here, and go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and guests tonight. So, give you a little history and background on County Powers Relief Act. I'll back up to probably 1998 when the county, 96 or 98, when the county decided to implement the $1,500 development tax. It actually started out lower than that, then it went to $1,500, which was paid front end $750, back end $750. In 2006, then Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey introduced a bill called the Tennessee County Powers Relief Act. That was passed. I actually had signed on to the bill when I was in the Senate, not realizing that was 16 years ago, and forgot most everything that was there but in the bill. But it's $1 per square foot that would be charged. And the way the language is in the bill is that it says after the closing, it's 90 days in which the payment has to be made to the county. And I think that is why the county has deferred not going to the to the $1 per square foot on that act. I think it was discussed many times, but Commissioner Harris, Chairman Harris, actually pulled that up and shared that with me. Started looking into it. Thank you, Chairman Harris, for reminding me of what was in that bill. I contacted Ron Ramsey. He didn't remember that the 90 days was in there either, and he was a sponsor of the bill. So what I proposed to the Board of Realtors, Tennessee State Board of Realtors, and to the Tennessee Home Builders Association, Charlie Schneider, who is their director, is that all we do, we have the authority. The county, that's the key part. The county currently has the authority today to go under the County Powers Relief Act at $1 a square foot. The only change to be made is is that at the time that the permit, when they go into the codes office and pull the permit for building, you would pay 50% on the front end and then pay 50% before the C of O is issued by the county, their certificate of occupancy. So in talking with the realtors today, Mr. Russ Farah, who is their lobbyist for the Board of Realtors, he said the language that they're going to propose, and I think we have two of our own legislators have dropped caption bills that will be presented. Language will be refined, basically because this is statewide application. The County Powers Relief Act is for statewide application, so it means all counties have to come under that if they choose to. So the language that he proposed today is that it stays the same language, that you can collect it 90 days after closing, or we can choose to let each county decide. They can keep it as it is, or they can collect 50% on the front end, 50% on the back end. And the only reason for that is that counties don't need to be in the collection business of trying to run down 90 days after the closing of that piece of property to try to collect the money. Who do you collect it from? So here, all this does is protect the county. Gets 50% up front, 50% at the back end. Have agreements from both Board of Realtors, State Board of Realtors, and Tennessee Home Builders Association. Questions?
Well,
Can I talk about the amount of money?
yes, I will get to that. So I felt like this was a bad idea, and one of the reasons I did is because I did not want to be in the business of collecting tax. I didn't want to be in a business where we had to hire somebody to go after tax, and also hurt our cash flow, which would really hurt our cash flow in the next 2 years. However, and I'm going to let you get to the numbers. I am in support of this because if they change that to where we collect half up front and half at the bottom. But we're looking at some numbers, and we did some numbers based on the last 7 years. And I'm going to let Commissioner Cush here talk in a minute, but go ahead and give us the numbers.
Basically, under the $1,500, Tanya figured up, based on the number of homes that came in this past year, on the number of permits in her department, it came out to about almost 3.9 million, compared to if we change and go over. I'm not advocating that we get rid of the development tax, but we have to give our word that we're going to put it on the shelf. In the event, as insurance, in the event that this bill does not pass the General Assembly, we still have that to come back to. But we need to honor our word by saying we will not implement both. Let me make that clear, that we're not going to come back and say we're going to do both of them, okay? So this commission will have to make this committee will make the recommendation to the full commission that we're not going to use that, and then if we continue and come under the Tennessee Powers Relief Act, then next year we'll do away with our own private act of 1,500. So you're looking at 3.9 million right now, almost. If we come under the Relief Act, it generates about 8.8 million. Am I correct, Tanya? Yes. About 8.8 million. And one thing that was told to us is that the county has not been collecting. If we go to the $1 per square foot, we haven't been charging anything for the addition onto a house. If you decide to take your garage and turn it into a living room or a family bonus room, or you buy a house that's half finished and you complete the second half, or you build a man cave out back, we haven't been charging anything per square foot. So you take that 8.8 million, compare and subtract from what we're getting today, you're looking at somewhere between 3.5 and $4 million increase by going in this direction.
Now, does it also have a growth factor in there?
It does have, the growth factor is already built into the bill
Why don't you
currently.
explain what that is?
The growth factor is based on population. If it exceeds a certain percentage in population, then the county every 4 years, you can't do it every year, it has to be on a 4-year basis that you're able to come back and increase it as long as your county continues to meet that growth factor.
Well, one of the reasons that I've kind of changed my attitude on it is Bill Spurlock asked this commission that he needs $500 million over the next 5 years, which is just unbelievable. And not to mention the roads that we have to deal with as well. I don't want to raise property tax. I don't think any commissioner wants to raise property tax, but we have to generate some type of revenue. And I know this is, it's a really controversial subject, and I think it's something, we have been trying to do this. I know for my 3 years, I have been trying to do something. And Mike Cush started an infrastructure committee, and he started to get the ball rolling. So, Mike, won't you just, I got these numbers right here, but let's go back to 7 years, because this could be a good year. Right now, we're in good time. So let's go back to 7 years and give me the numbers that you have with that.
Six feet. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, this is not a new topic. We chat about this every year, as most of you know. You can tell by my antique blonde hair that this is a subject that comes up frequently. But this year, we attacked it from a little different angle. Under the Public Works and Planning Commission, we decided to start a ad hoc infrastructure select committee that was made of 3 commissioners, and then an individual from the Planning Commission. And we met multiple times, probably 10 maybe, Paul. And we met with the Realtors Association, we met with developers multiple times, and explained our problem. And most of these people that we spoke to are residents of the county, and they realize our problem. And for the first time, at least in my tenure on the county commission for 6 years now, for the first time, at least I felt we got some positive feedback and some buy-in from these groups, knowing that we were really backed into a corner where growth was far exceeding our ability to bring in revenue through property taxes and wheel taxes. So I felt very positive that you all felt our need and were willing to help in some way. So coming to our legislative group, we feel like it's not just the commission now asking the same old story. Hey, would you change the development tax or let us try something different? The answer was always no, because for lots of reasons. But I think now that at least we're coming in as a group with a unified message, or with at least some degree of support, I think that our voices as a power are going to be heard a little better. Now, the chair asked me about numbers. When the infrastructure committee first took on this task, Tanya was a big part of that. And we ran some preliminary numbers of the dollar per square foot versus the development tax. And the numbers we were getting then weren't quite as attractive as the numbers we've got now. I'm not sure why that is, but we didn't put a lot of emphasis in that County Powers Relief Act, that dollar square foot. But digging deeper and peeling those layers of onion back even further, what we have found is if you run it back to 2004 and you compare the development tax to the dollar per square foot potential revenue, the factor that always concerned us and the infrastructure committee was the apartment complexes, because that is a big win for us, because that square footage, you get that 1,500 even though the square footage of those apartments is much smaller. So that was the odd man out, right? So Tanya made a really good list of all the complexes that have been built in the last 7 years, 6 years. And it looks like now that most of those have been built out. The city has 2 kind of in the works right now. But if you look at the spreadsheet, it looks like, holy smokes, we've built a ton of apartment complexes, and maybe we've kind of saturated that market for a minute. So, long story short, you just heard the mayor say the difference in 2020 was about a $3.5 million windfall if we would have taken the dollar per square foot. You run those numbers back to 2004 and add the total, we would have had 11.5 million, plus or minus, this is Riverdale math, plus or minus $11.5 million if we would have opted for the dollar per square foot. So Chairman Harris has done a turnaround. I have done a turnaround based on the infrastructure's original findings. I know Robert Stevens, part of our steering committee, last month was for this type of review. So I think this is the right decision. I believe the mayor said the way it's currently written, we do have the ability to increase, is it 10% every 4 years?
Yes, sir.
I guess that language would stay.
That's
right?
correct. Nothing else changes.
All right. And I guess if we can just agree on getting some money up front like we do with the development tax now to operate on, and then having a portion at the CFO, getting your occupancy permit, then, man, we're good to go. We're good to go. Because the alternative is not good. It's not good. You know, I'll say it, I don't represent the 21 commissioners. I represent Mike Cush, District 7. I've been a dozen years on the Planning Commission, and we see this every day. I don't, but I'm going to say things like moratorium or traffic shed or developers paying more money if they impact transportation. I'm going to say that because that's the only alternative legally we have, right? So there is an alternative, and I'm telling you, you're not going to like it. So I hope you get on board with what we're proposing now. So, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Is there any discussion? Robert Stevens, Commissioner Stevens, apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am really glad that we've had a turn of opinion on this matter. Facts make a big difference, and so last month I had done some basic research and the numbers and so forth, and I came up with the conclusion that we would collect more money if we switched to this other method and could work through some of the issues like the collection, which it sounds like that's a breakthrough. And one more thing we need to consider is that this County Powers Relief Act says the money can only be used for education projects. We might want to ask our legislators to widen that to any capital projects. Otherwise, we might have to shift some money from education capital projects to a general fund, and I'm not sure if we can do that or not, so that might cause some issues for us too. But I'm very excited that the committee seems to be coming around to this idea. I think it's a good idea, and I think that this is something that is actually going to have potential to help us instead of doing the same thing again, the same way that's going to get us the same results. So I am very supportive of this, and I hope that our legislators will come through for us and help us make these minor changes that will help us collect more revenue and meet our needs.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mayor?
Let me, one more comment, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to spill any rumors. Rumors got back to me this weekend that myself and the commission was looking at a $10,000 per project. impact fee and development fee, dispel those rumors. I don't know where that got started, but that is not true. It's never been true. Never been mentioned by anybody on this commission. So there's people out there just trying to kill any opportunity they can to keep from raising what is already there before you. I don't have a vote. All I do is do the homework and present it to this commission. So as we move forward, I think it's something that the committee really needs to look at. You know, when we talk about the growth, all of you probably saw or heard that Tennessee was the #1 U-Haul destination 2 weeks ago, and that report came out. People are coming here like crazy. And when it cost us $72 million to build a high school, like we did 2 years ago in Rockville, we can't continue on $1,500. There has to be, otherwise we're going to have to lay it on the feet of all property taxpayers, and nobody wants a property tax increase. So this is a way that's already there. All we're doing is just saying how we're going to get the money back for the commission in a different manner. It's already there available for us, and we collect more money.
Any more discussion? Commissioner Reed?
I have to say I have turned this way too. As you look at the figures that you had sent out in the last few days, that's showing what would have been the difference in the different cities where we're seeing some of the construction and going on, and what's happened there in the number of structures that single families have been built, and where that would have figured in, and what the difference would have been there. That shows you right there what it could have meant for us and the difference that we're needing there. And just as Commissioner Stevens says there, I think it's important that we do spread this out to the general fund because there's just so many other areas right now that we have to look at and where we're going. Just as you mentioned the schools there, you mentioned the brand new school that we have right now at Rockville. And the cost of that is $72 million. And we thought, it's like everything else we build. This is the school to take care of everything for a very long time. That school right now, possibly if it continues as it looks like this year, maybe next year, that high school may have to have portables already, as we have just built that school at 2,300 students, I think. So this is the way it goes. I live 15 miles from this courthouse out there on a rural road that I can't hardly get the mail out of my mailbox for the traffic going back and forth that comes there, where it hadn't been many years that you didn't see anybody going down that road. And we've got this all over this county. And we say general fund or whatever, you mention the costs that we have here. All we've got to look at what COVID did in just 1 year's time and the costs that we've had within this county. I know for something, we come out of public safety just last Monday night, a week ago. We found out, dealing with our public safety, COVID affected, when you hear of Nashville with all they went through, their first responders, such as their EMTs, those individuals, some of those have already gone to hospitals because the hospitals can take them and place them on staff there just under the nurses. Well, Davidson County has had the need for paramedics and EMTs, so they have hired out of Williamson County and Wilson County. Well, now Wilson County and Williamson County are contacting our paramedics. And a paramedic can leave Rutherford County and make $10,000 more a year by just leaving our county. So here we are, once again, looking at an empty basket of applicants. So here we are again. Well, where do we find the money? Where do we find how to get these individuals to do this? If you can't remember, just a few years ago, we were having this same problem with teachers that were going elsewhere because of what the difference would be in a salary. So I think it's just very crucial that we get this done and what we look for, and I think this will possibly be the way we need to go.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Gentlemen, The question is, do we recommend this to the county commission? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Robert Stevens.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we should send a resolution to this effect just yet or not. I would rather wait and see what happens on the back end of the legislature before we commit to do something and end our source of revenue. What they say it starts as and how it ends at the finish line might be different, and I would be very uncomfortable sending something or making this change until we know what's going to happen at the end of their session. So I'm not comfortable voting on it tonight. I want to wait and see what happens at the finish line. And if it comes out in favor of what the way that we expect it to, then we can make the switch in a couple of months.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, let me just make a comment. Having been there, I think that it's going to be difficult on the two sponsors, the one for the Senate and the House, unless you come with something from the body committing this body. It's going to be hard for them to stand up in front of, because it is statewide application. It's not a local private act saying, well, is your county behind this? They'll be asked that question and we're going, well, they're going to wait and see. Well, then what's going to happen? Because final bill cutoff, I believe, is next week. You'll see Representative Sparks out there and others. If
It's the 14th.
14th is final bill cutoff, if you don't have some kind of commitment going forward that this is at the request of the Rutherford County Commission and the deal has been agreed to by the Tennessee home builders and the realtors, why don't you wait and ask them when they get in there?
Mr. Stevens, what is it exactly that you don't want to go forward? What language are you looking for?
Are you looking for us to make the switch, like to go ahead and recommend that we make the switch this month? Or are you just looking for us to send a resolution in support of making the changes to the County Powers Relief Act that we would like to see to help it more, make it more beneficial to us?
Yes.
If we're just sending a simple resolution and ask them to support those changes, I'm fine with that. But if we're sending a resolution that says we're going to ask them to get rid of our private act and we're making this switch, I'm not comfortable doing that just yet until we see how it comes out of the back end.
Not at all.
Not giving up the private act. I said we would have to give our word that we will shelve that private act to move forward with the County Powers Relief Act, just as insurance in the event that it does not pass. We can continue to use that after they adjourn. If it does pass, then we will honor our word that because there has to be some faith from the public that we're not going to come back and use both of them if it does pass.
No, we're not. That's not going to happen.
I know, but it needs to be in the
Mr.
record.
Chairman.
Are you good with that? Mr. Stevens, Commissioner Stevens? What we're doing is we're asking for a motion to bring this to the county commission to change to $1 per square foot, which is what we talked about here.
And not to use the development tax.
Go ahead, Commissioner Stevens.
If we are asking them to make the change for us to allow us to collect half up front and half on the back end, I'm very fine with sending that resolution forward because that's something that we definitely need to have happen. If we're committing to make this change and voting that we're going to do it and things don't work out in our favor, I'm not sure that we can go back once we've opted out of our private act. I think the way it's worded is that if you switch to the County Powers Relief Act, then the old private act is abolished. And I would want some clarification on that before we make the switch.
No, if it doesn't pass legislation, we continue to where we are right now. So do you
Mr.
have a
Chairman.
motion? Commissioner P., Chairman P.?
Thank you for letting me ask the question. The proposal that you send, I'm kind of like Commissioner Reed, Chairman of Public Safety. It would be good if we could enact a change also while we're trying to do this so that it doesn't all have to be sent just on education, because that'd be a tough balancing act in some ways to be able to move those monies around where we're getting the tax dollars now. So my question is, are we going to request to be able to use this money in places besides schools for needed infrastructure?
I'll tell you what, this is pretty important. I'm going to ask that we can defer this till after we meet with the delegates so that you'll feel a little bit more, Commissioner Stevens, you'll feel a little bit more and see how they are on this and see who's going to carry it and see who's going to sponsor it. Is everybody good with that? Everybody good? Commissioner Stevens? All right. I am going to call a 5-minute recess and allow our delegates to get set up and to come in here. They will be sitting up here, and we'll be back at 6:05. I'm going to call the County Commission Steering Committee meeting back in session. I want to take time to thank our delegates. I think this is a big moment every year for Rutherford County to see that the people we sent to take care of us with the state level. I know these people very well. They've done a really good job, and I have the utmost respect for them. We have Tennessee Representative Mike Sparks, Senator Shane Reeves, Tennessee State Rep Charlie Baum, Senator Don White, Chairman Brian Terry, and State Rep Tim Ruck. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. I appreciate it. We're going to try to cover as many areas as I can without keeping us here all night. So I want to start off with, and I'm going to jump around. I've given you questions before this meeting so that we all have prepared for them. The first one I'm going to ask is Commissioner McAdoo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question I got for the state delegates are, do you feel that county and state leadership have a good and mutual relationship?
Y'all hear that?
Thank you, Commissioner McAdoo. Of course, my dad served with you on the county commission, and I've known you for years and years and think the world of you. I saw what a county commissioner did when my dad served up here. You're not doing it for the pay. You're not doing it for the glory. You're not doing it for the notoriety. You're doing it to be a public servant. And I think we're up here as well being public servants. And I think we're here to represent Rutherford County and want Rutherford County to be the best state in the county and in the country and in the state. We want it to be the best, and I think we need to work together. Of course, Paul Johnson over there was at my wedding 20 years ago. So, yes, I've been able to keep Chad for 20 years, and he's been able to keep me. It's been amazing, hasn't it? But some of the newer commissioners I may not know as well. And I think we need to start building that relationship, whether it's just meeting at a local coffee shop for coffee or, just talking once a month, especially if I represent you and you're my commissioner. I would love to open that line of communication. So if anyone does not have my cell phone after this, please come to me. I'll be happy to send you my cell phone, and let's meet for that cup of coffee, because I think we all want Rutherford County to be the best in the state of Tennessee, and everybody to look at Rutherford County and say, wow, what are y'all doing in Rutherford County that we need to do in our county?
Anybody else? Senator Reeves? All right, I'm sorry. Representative Baum?
Thank you for the question. We're glad to be here. Thank you for having us. I know one issue that we have worked on for a number of years is the development tax issue with the County Powers Relief Act. That's been an issue that that we're going to talk about later, so I won't jump the gun on it, but I know that that's an issue where the County Commission has probably been disappointed that we haven't been able to get more done on that issue, but I think that we have made progress, and we're going to have some details tonight that hopefully will move that forward.
Senator Reeves?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, appreciate the question. I think the fact that you asking the question, that there's a perception that there's some kind of tension between the state delegation, between the county commission. this last year's been a tough year, but I've always really believed that in times of chaos, in times of uncertainty, in times of tension, if you feel like there is any kind of tension, it's job security for leaders. And I think we're all leaders in this room, and we need to work together through things we agree on and things we don't agree on. I believe at the end of the day, we all just need to be honest and kind with each other and be able to build on things we can come to consensus on. But at the end of the day, it's not us versus you or you versus us. It's all of us together working together for this wonderful county and the citizens that live here and trying to live and work and raise our families. So I appreciate the question. We've all got work to do on that and committed to doing so. Thank you.
Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Commissioner McAdoo. I served with you, 11 years ago, I guess it was. We always had a good relationship. But, like Senator Reeves says, we're all in this together. I may represent the northwest corner of Rutherford County, but the issues in Commissioner Rather's district, Commissioner Cush's district, Pettis Reed's district, I'm concerned about. But it's the same way as a lawmaker. We're concerned about Memphis, concerned about Mountain City, Memphis, and Manchester and other areas of the county, of the state. But the issues are extremely diverse in Tennessee. That's one of the first things I learned as a lawmaker in Nashville, how diverse Tennessee was. I've shared this before. One of the first things some guys were talking about were cockfighting and moonshine. I thought they were cutting up, and they were serious. It was Frank Nicely and Jeremy Faison, and they were serious. But that's part of Cotton County, I've never been a part of it, full disclosure, Mayor. But Mayor has always treated me good, got to brag on him. I've often kidded him that I was the most disagreeable one in our delegation the past, 8 years we served. And we would agreed on most issues, though. But you have my cell phone, y'all can call me anytime. But like Senator Reeves said, one thing about politics that really bothers me is the turf wars and personalities and egos, and it stops helping the people. And that's what we're here. That's who puts us up here. And I've shared this. I see some people in the audience that I'm friends with, Catherine, Jackie, Gabriel, and I've often wondered if there's ever been a study of egos and pride and arrogance and how it stopped moving forward. I met with my accountant today, Harold Gallion. He was retired from co-op. I said, did y'all do a lot of fighting when you was at co-op? A lot of arguing. He says, no, Mike, we just concentrate on the issues and get working to solve problems. So that's what I'm here tonight, and that's what I want to support y'all in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Rubb, then Representative Terry.
Thank you. Yeah, to answer your question, I have a very good relationship with most of the commission that I know. Some I don't. Most of the commissioners in my district, Johnson, McAdoo, Gooch, Gurley, Reed, Cush, most of those that communicate with me on a regular basis. They let me know what's going on in the district when there's a fire or when there's a traffic accident or TDOT needs help. We need help with TDOT or constituent issues. And I try to respond to that in a timely manner. And for the ones that aren't in my district, a lot of them I know personally. I've supported in their elections, and I have an excellent relationship with most of the countywide officials as well. So I think we work together most of the time, and proud to call most of you friends, and I hope to get to know the others. Thank you.
Thank you again for that question. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I think back to the first time I was here in front of the county commission, and I talked about having, being open, being self-governance, being a person of the people, and being open to meetings or having any discussions. I've had an open door for you guys. Some I've met for lunch or breakfast. Some, phone calls or emails, and doors still open. If you guys have issues or anything like that, give me a call, shoot me an email. Y'all know how to get in touch with me. If you don't, I'll give you all that information afterwards.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask Commissioner Cush to present his question.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I have a two-parter. Rutherford County, as you all know, really the state, but Rutherford County, it's an it county, right? I mean, everybody wants to be here. And we got folks moving from Texas, from California, from the Northeast. It's becoming a regular melting pot. And growth is a result of that. So I am curious as to, are there ideas or is there legislation that you're kicking around that will address or can address this huge amount of growth that doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon? In terms of schools, we chatted about, you know, we're dealing with a huge solid waste decision right now. In 2 weeks, we've got RFPs coming to try to figure out how to deal with our situation, and that's going to require some money, and some people that have been getting trash service for free for all these years will likely have to pay some kind of a monthly fee. So becoming a popular county means also services are going to increase. Pet has talked about some of the needs on public safety, but I'm just curious as to what you're kicking around in, if anything, on how to deal with all this growth and what we might be able to glean from that is part one.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Cush. I think the delegation as a whole is going to be supporting some legislation that is designed to bring some additional dollars back to Rutherford County to deal with the growth, because I'm aware from my time on the commission that Rutherford County's growth requires the county to build essentially one new school per year. These schools cost tens of millions of dollars. It's difficult to keep up with that. Growing counties in many ways are blessed, but they have to build infrastructure to keep up with the growth. This delegation is going to be supporting the Tennessee Local Capital Investment Act. Senator White's going to be carrying this on the Senate side. I am on the House side. Last year we tried to pass this legislation. Senator Reeves carried it in the Senate. There's actually two versions of this bill. The bill is designed to bring money from the state back to the county to build new schools. And it would do this for growing counties. One version of the bill would provide about $30 million across the state in recurring funds. That's pretty ambitious to use recurring dollars like that. The second version of the legislation is essentially the same thing, but it's non-recurring funds. It's a $30 million amount that would be provided to growing counties in order to build new schools just one time, just 1 year. Obviously, our preference, the preference of the whole delegation, is to pass the version of this legislation that is recurring or provides recurring money. But of course, the problem you get into is passing that legislation requires a certain number of votes. This is legislation that appeals to growing counties. Rutherford County representatives and senators from counties like Rutherford County are in support of this. Other kinds of counties, like rural counties, are experiencing shrinking populations. They wouldn't get any money from this legislation, so they're not necessarily for it. Urban representatives and senators have their own sets of issues. So what we've tried to do is draft the legislation broad enough so that we can have a meaningful impact with the money, and broad enough so that we can get enough votes for the legislation to pass. We attempted to pass this legislation last year. It didn't pass. We're going to try again. Last year was complicated partly due to COVID. Of course, there's rural and urban representatives and senators that wouldn't stand to benefit from the legislation, and so they may be a little bit less likely to support it. But we're going to try it again. We've got two versions. Again, one would be a little bit more aggressive, one a little bit less aggressive. I believe Rutherford County's cut of this $30 million would be around $4 million. In a way, I wish it could be more, but if you're going to provide enough resources for enough counties to get the votes you need to pass the bill, then the pot, the kitty, gets divided across counties. So that's one piece of legislation that we're, as a delegation, going to be supporting. We have some details on the development tax and the County Powers Relief Act. I don't know if you want us to go into that at this moment. That's sprinkled in through several questions, but I think I think some of the ideas we have for that also offers the potential to bring some money back to Rutherford County, or to provide money for Rutherford County to spend on infrastructure. And maybe I should pass the microphone to Shane and some others to comment on some of this, and then we can get into the details on this development tax.
Well, you can, I want to go from here to the development tax. So this question is pretty much asking you that as well. Yeah. So go ahead, Senator Reeves. Oh, I'm sorry.
On the first bill?
All right, I got to start going here and
She's carrying the
here.
other half of yours.
I got to go left and right.
The capital.
Go ahead, Senator White. Vice Chair, Senator White.
You know, I'm honored to carry this bill with Representative Baum. You know, it's going to be a hard sell, I'll be honest with you, because of the budgetary needs that we have, that we're going to have to reinstate that we cut last year because of COVID. But you have myself, Representative Baum, and Representative Sparks on finance to fight. And we understand the hardship. And y'all have got to fund a school a year. And we do not want for y'all to have that burden. So we're fighting every bit of the way with you up at the Capitol to try to pass the Capital Investment Act. And so, you know, you have my word that I will fight my hardest, and I know Representative Baum and Representative Sparks will be right there fighting as well to try to fund this. But it will be, and I don't want to give you false hope, and I want to be transparent here, but it will be a hard sell because we cut so much out of the budget last year that we're going to have to reinstate with the surplus that we have. That, you know, we cut so much not knowing what our sales tax revenue was going to be, how long the state was going to have to be shut down or anything like that. So we did a bare bones, and now we're going to have to reinstate a lot of those programs, and it's going to take a lot of money.
Senator Reeves?
Do you want to Representative Terry, you got a comment to make? Are we going to dovetail, Mr. Chairman?
I'm going to try to go look left and look right.
You want us to dovetail on the county powers, or you want to finish up this topic first?
I want to dovetail on the county powers. Go ahead.
Well, I guess kind of leading into that, one of the things that off this last question that I have done, and again, they have put forth that it is a hard sell. You know, we have, when you're outnumbered, you have to get allies, and whether that's other growth counties. I have met with the governor on this particular issue about being a growth county, and I have spoken to him about the needs that we have here in Rutherford County. I did that on last month. I've spoken with the speaker. I've spoken with the leader. One thing that I think that not just on this bill, but something that the county commission can do, and the mayor could do, the County Mayors Association. Get together with them, and it may be on some issues that may not just be growth counties. Maybe there's a need for some of the distressed counties. And if, you're aware that sometimes bills up there's two different parts of a bill, and it helps, you know, may help one county, may help another county, and that may be a way that we can get the votes to do that. So that's something that, you know, just because we have a piece of legislation that we are looking to support, we have to get allies, and we may have to amend it, and we may have to, you know, work it through that process. So that's something that I wanted to make sure that everybody knew in relation to this as we talk about the County Powers Relief Act.
Go ahead, Representative Sparks.
Well, like Senator White just mentioned, it's a tough sale. It's a tough sale. I'm not going to blow smoke. It's a tough sale. But what Dr. Terry just mentioned, and I brought it up for years, taxpayer-funded lobbyists. Now, they got mad at me last year, and I'm glad they got mad at me, because what are they doing? What's the return on investment for us? If this county is funding the Mayor Association, if they're funding all these other associations, School Superintendent Association, School Board Association, all these other associations, what have you done for us lately? That's what I'm saying. If you hire an advocate or a lobbyist, a liaison, what's in it for our county? To me, that's a simple question, you know. I heard they got mad at me, and I'm glad they got mad at me. And a lot of them are nice folks. But, you know, I brought this up when I was on the county commission because we were dealing with the same thing back then, weren't we, Commissioner Johnson? The growth. But some county, some house districts are losing people. I mean, some areas of the state are losing population where we're gaining. But one thing out of this COVID that's kind of been a blessing, if you will, is the virtual learning. And I brought up virtual learning when I was on this county commission. I think we've got an opportunity. We just had, roughly 1 million children do virtual learning. It's been kind of successful. It's not for everyone. I've taken some online classes. I don't like them. I need to be in a classroom. But I've got a bill that I'm going to present the County Commission Association. Charlie Curtis said he'd get behind me. The mayor said he'd get behind me. It's on your desk. It's a limited educational scholarship, and the counties would retain 25% of those monies and limit it to 1,000 students a year. 1,000 students a year, which is your average growth the past 5 years. Your growth's been about 2.6. We're at 47,000 students. But those monies would follow those kids. Let those parents choose if they're in fast-growing districts. Now, if they're in a slow-growing school district, maybe they can't participate. But that, in my opinion, should go back to the school board because they know those districts better than we do as lawmakers. But the county would retain that 25%. So it's a win-win because the next school, I just looked here, $108 million. Is that what it is, Mayor? $108 million, man. Our forefathers. Could you imagine Will Jordan's father if he seen that, chairman of the school board back in the day? I think we've let things get out of control. College student debt's $1.8 trillion and growing and growing. And I don't see nothing done about it. Now, you might say, well, that's a different issue, Mike. It's almost the same issue in the sense the premise is still there. But I think we need to take advantage of what's going on with, you know, even though we've had hardship with COVID, people have adjusted. I don't like Zoom calls. I want to be in person. But I have that bill in front of you. Steve said he would get it to the other commissioners, and I'd like for y'all to take a position on it at steering maybe next month. It's hard for me to get behind increase in taxes and development fees and impact fees when I know what's going on with housing. My son's looking for a house now. I bought my first house at 22. My wife was 18. That is unheard of today. And it's sad where things are at. And I get accused of maybe talking, but you know, there's a term for people that don't talk. I'm not going to use it. My dad used it. Pettis knows the term. Starts with an N. He knows the term. But somebody needs to be talking because we can't continue to just raise property taxes, raise development fees, raise impact fees. I know Laverne done it, but the issue of affordable housing is real. There's nothing affordable. And if it is, it's an apartment complex, and who really wants more apartments? So I'm asking y'all to take a position on this bill. I brought this up 12 and 14 years ago. It shouldn't be controversial. But somehow, somebody will make this controversial. But that's my answer, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Rudd.
Thank you. Let's see, a host of things that were brought up. I guess the question, do I support the development tax as being talked about? There's different plans. On the face of it, no. The revenue it would generate wouldn't anywhere be near what I think the county's needing between continuous education expansion and the landfill coming up. It wouldn't generate anywhere near that revenue. Plus, it's fairly unstable given the current environment. Being a realtor, I see firsthand, I've been a realtor since 1998, and I see firsthand the massive impact in the last few years of what's going on here. Except for 2 or 3 developments that were started when land was more affordable, we're no longer build starter homes. And I'd probably say 80% of the homes built in this county for the last 30 years were starter homes. That's what fueled the development, that's what fueled the housing boom, and that's what fueled all the population increase was starter homes. Well, we don't build starter homes anymore. And those people are still moving here, especially from Nashville, because they're being bumped out of Nashville because of increased property values and taxes. So they're moving here, and that's why apartments are going up everywhere. And most people that live in apartments in the last year or two are not establishing roots here because they can't buy a home here. So it's causing a lot of instability in our neighborhoods because they move every 6 months to every year or two. And they're waiting to buy a home, but like I said, they can't buy homes like they used to because the land values have skyrocketed and taxes have continue to go up as well. And the building costs have grown at building materials, especially during COVID. So right now, poor people can't buy a home in Rutherford County unless you buy an existing home. Lower middle class people can't buy a home in Rutherford County because they don't build them anymore. There's only so many. And due to the fact that they're not building starter homes anymore, it's driven dramatically, almost it's probably a 30 to 40% increase in the value in the last few years of existing starter homes here. And that topped that off with national rental companies that's come in and bought up thousands of homes. We're just putting people out of the market here. So we're left with higher end homes going up, and there's only so much our market's going to afford. So I would actually say growth as far as the building industry and individual homes is going to start going down and stabilizing because they can't build the homes people want right now. And I don't want to play a part in pushing poor people, middle class people out of buying a home. That's what we're talking about also is our children here in Rutherford County that born here and raised here. They can't buy homes either because there's no homes to buy anymore. They're becoming a very rare quantity on the market. As far as the County Powers Act, amending it is kind of hard because other counties don't want to do certain things, but I don't believe in the County Powers Act. I think it should be eliminated altogether. I think every city and county should do whatever they want to do, and if you do something that people don't like, you'll be thrown out just like we will. So I don't even, like I said, I don't even believe in the County Powers Act altogether. If it could be stripped and redone all across the state rather than just Rutherford County, I'd be for it. We also have to look, and I keep asking the question both of legislators, lawyers, and county leaders, what are the consequences for amending Rutherford County's County Powers Act? Will you lose any money or benefits in it? It's tied to something. Every thing created by government is usually tied to money, so if they created the County Powers Act and we amend it, what do you stand to lose or gain other than the power to raise taxes? So that's a question I like somebody somewhere to answer, and no one can. Other than that, I have proposed recently, and the House leadership is extremely excited about it, and the delegation in the Senate here is supportive of it, but I can't get any traction in Senate leadership as to creating an infrastructure fund, which would set aside a certain percentage of any surplus to go in that fund to fund major projects over $5 million, like roads, science buildings at universities, and other things, just to set that aside. And what I've gotten the feedback is, well, we already have that ability. Well, that's not really true, because if we don't have the money set aside, we're going to have to cut money out of the budget that would have gone to schools, would have gone to health care, or something else. But if it's set aside from the very outset, everybody knows mentally you're not going to spend it on anything but infrastructure and building. So I'm pushing that and trying to get that passed, and it may take me a few years, but I've started that and have that proposal written up now. And Senator Hale's got it in the Senate. Whether I run it this year, if I don't have any support, I don't like wasting my time. It may take a while to network and get people to support it and see the practicality of it, but I propose that. I've also, looking at, again, I'm not proposing what I'm about to tell you, but I have proposed something that I started last year as a complete feasibility study. And as more agencies in government are gathering information from me, you're probably going to be hearing about it. And right now, I haven't met with teachers. I haven't met with schools. I'm just trying to get the facts and figures. And that is, would it help counties, and how much would it help counties, if all the teachers went on became state employees and their benefits and salary were paid by the state? Now, of course, given that 75 to 80% of all county budgets usually go to schools, a certain percentage of the county's revenue would have to be transferred to the state. And the counties would continue to pay for schools and the contents and et cetera. But we would make sure in a formula that I've asked them to figure, we would keep so that the county benefits from it. In other words, we just don't take what you're paying now. We would take like 85% percent, say, of a salary, and the rest would stay in the county. So I'm looking at the feasibility of that and whether that's possible. This study could take a couple of years to gather all this information. And again, it's not a proposal. I have no legislation. I'm just gathering the information to see how, if it would help the counties, and it would help teachers. That way they would be treated fair across the state. There'd be the same curricula, same training, same system to award them and to judge them. And they'd have the same benefits, et cetera, and it'd be easier on them across the state, I think. But I haven't had a chance to meet with them right now. I'm just getting the facts and figures and looking to see if it's even practical. Outside of that, I guess I've addressed most of what you'd asked, but thank you.
Senator Reeves?
I'm tired of masks.
You have no problem with me.
Please get your vaccines. Goodness, tired of your mask. So, Commissioner, I appreciate the question. So, I think some of you are somewhat familiar with what we're talking about doing. The compromise that Mayor Ketron's been talking about. We've been in conversations with some realtors and with some builders as far as looking at the County Powers Act. So, I'm going to make a couple of high-level comments. The bill that I'm going to introduce is going to be carrying in the Senate. Representative Baum's going to be carrying it in the House. Like I said, let me make a couple of high-level comments first. And I think the first one is, local government is definitely hard. There's no question about it. You especially in a county like Rutherford, seeing such massive double-digit growth year after year. And I absolutely feel your pain as far as what you're having to deal with from an infrastructure in schools. And so you have to have the support of your state delegation. I get that. Secondly, and I kind of agree with what Representative Rudd said, I think I would say it like this. Philosophically, I would not want to have to go to Congressman Scott Desjardins to balance Tennessee's budget. That would be hard for us to be able to do. I'd like to be able to use the funds we have in the state of Tennessee to balance our own budget. And so I'm sure it's frustrating to you to have to come to us on things like this along the way. As far as changing the County Powers Act, really looking at it, the reason it's taken so long, it is true. If we change it, it changes it for all 95 counties. That's Davidson County with 700,000 people and Moore County with 6,000 people. It impacts everybody, so it's a big lift. It's a big lift politically, and it's a big lift to be able to get that done. But I do believe we have an idea that's was suggested by Mayor Ketron and others that I believe the builders and realtors will support. It's not perfect, but it's maybe a step in the right direction. So you want to share with them some of the details? Or do you want us to do this? Okay.
I believe the result would be that Rutherford County would have the ability to move to the County Powers Relief Act from their private act that they're currently on, and under an amended County Powers Relief Act, the money provided, this dollar per square foot, could be paid half at the time the permit is pulled and half at the certificate of occupancy. Now, Mayor Ketron, are you in a position to state whether this would raise money for the county, or more specifically, how much money this would raise for Rutherford County if these things happened?
Yes, sir. Representative, we went over that, went over the figures before we went into recess and let you all come in. So what I stated to the committee was it's somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million increase over what we're doing under our private act right now, based on the number of new home starts.
Okay, thank you for giving that information. That is our understanding, which would help the county. This may raise the question, well, why can't the county just raise the $1,500 flat development tax under the current private act? And so what I thought I'd do is give a 2 or 3 minute history lesson on why that doesn't seem to be possible. Before 2006, counties had private acts where they were able to assess development taxes and other fees like impact fees. And then in 2006, a piece of legislation was passed called the County Powers Relief Act, which was designed to provide relief to counties in the form of a $1 per square foot tax. And the idea was that all these counties that already had private acts would leave their private acts. Those private acts would go away, and these counties would move to this County Powers Relief Act. Rutherford County had that opportunity. Back in 2006, they would have gone from the $1,500 flat development tax to the $1 per square foot provisions provided by the County Powers Relief Act. Rutherford County didn't want to, and other counties didn't want to, so during the negotiations in Nashville, a provision was drafted that would have allowed counties under private acts to be grandfathered into those private acts and keep them. They wouldn't have to go to the County Powers Relief Act. They could keep their private act with the understanding that they would never be able to amend it or change it or increase it, and no new counties would be able to have development taxes under a private act. All new counties wanting to tax development would have to go under the County Powers Relief Act. And if you want to somehow charge more at some point, that's going to be done by moving to the County Powers Relief Act and then subsequently raising this $1 per square foot. Back in 2006, Rutherford County decided to keep their private act. And since that time, given the provisions of this County Powers Relief Act, Rutherford County hasn't been permitted to raise this flat $1,500 development tax. And I know there's frustration among the County Commission. They don't understand why Rutherford County can't raise this fee. In order to raise the fee, this County Powers Relief Act would have to be amended, and it's a piece of legislation that affects the whole state, all 95 counties. It's not something that would just affect Rutherford County. By changing this provision in the legislation, it would affect other counties that have these grandfathered private acts. In Nashville, there's not the support to do that. It's been discussed just about every year the last several years in Nashville. There's not the support to do that. So what we're looking for is a way to help Rutherford County, specifically by providing more money through development taxes for Rutherford County to build new schools with, in a way that will pass. And so the provisions here would allow Rutherford County to move to the County Powers Relief Act and get their money earlier. Senator Reeves is saying faster. One of the concerns Rutherford County had back in 2006 was that at the time, the County Powers Relief Act provided this $1 per square foot all on the back end, and the county had to get in the collections business. Not only did they not get the money up front, but they had to bear the burden of collecting the money, and Mayor Burgess back at that time didn't want to get into the collections business. So this piece of legislation that we're going to be attempting to pass would solve that problem, because half of the fee would be paid up front and the county wouldn't be in the business of collecting the tax. They get the money a little bit sooner, they're not burdened with collecting this tax. Maybe that addresses the concern Mayor Burgess had 14 years ago. And then in the process, when Rutherford County moves to the $1 per square foot amount, that amount is permitted to be changed over time with growth. For example, after a 5-year period, if you grow enough, it can go up to $1.10 without having to change the legislation. Doesn't require a bill to do that. That would happen automatically. So we think that this proposal that we have would, according to Mayor Ketchum, would raise money for the county. It would be flexible enough for development fees through this $1 per square foot tax to go up over time. The legislation, the County Powers Relief Act as written, provides a way for the $1 per square foot to go up over time with growth. The sticking point for Rutherford County had been when the money is collected and the burden of collecting it. This legislation would solve that, and we hope that there would be the support in Nashville for this legislation to pass. In order to try and ensure that, we have been speaking with and working with the home builders and the realtors. These are the groups that lobby the senators and representatives in Nashville to vote no on these kinds of bills. If we can get their buy-in so that they don't lobby against it, it's got a chance of passing, maybe a good chance of passing.
Got a question. On this proposed bill, does the ability to raise it 10%, is it 5 or 4? Is it 4 years or 5? To my understanding, it was 4.
I think it is 4. In the back of my mind, I was thinking 4, but 5 sounds like a round number, and I didn't want to overestimate, so I said 5 years, but I think it is 4 years. It go from $1 to $1.10 in 4 years.
And my second question that you can ask is, in your bill, does the funds that are raised from this allocated to a certain line item like education, or is it in the general fund?
I think that's up to the county.
Okay.
Because my question
But
was
you're
going
not
to
going
be...
to put any
No,
type
no,
of-
no.
okay.
My question was, is this going to go to schools, or is it going to go in the general fund? That's what I wanted to know.
Thank you. I do believe it is directed for schools. And I did have a question maybe for the mayor, just to get clarification. I don't have the 2020 numbers, but I think that the 2019 numbers was around $6.5 million. If this transitioned over, got another $3.5 million, it would raise it to 10 million or 10.5 million. And so we're saying that 5 million would be up front and another 5 million would be on the back end. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct, Representative.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Let me just clarify after, as I spoke earlier, Representative Baum, I mentioned earlier I had talked to the State Board of Realtors today, the representative, Mr. Russ Farah. He said that when they were going to sit down with you all, suggest the language be that it remains as is, what's currently on the books in the statute, but also add that you can collect, as it is right now, 90 days afterwards, or the county can choose to collect 50% up front and 50% on the rears before you get to C of O. So that's really the only, just leave it up to each county to decide how they want to collect the money.
You know, as being a senator so many years, you know there's unintended consequences, and you never know how other counties are going to react to this.
Right.
You would think that'd be benign enough, and we could say this is a Rutherford County issue alone, that it would be successful. We're going to do our best.
Yeah, this really only affects those high growth counties. You know, in talking to Lieutenant Governor Ramsey last week, he said that he had only wished in his 26 years in the legislature that he would have worked harder to bring industry and businesses to the northern end of the state, in Bristol and Tri-Cities area. He said, we are actually closing 2 high schools this year in Sullivan County. They're closing them down because people are not staying there. There are no jobs for the young people to stick with, so they're going where the jobs are. Yeah, people are moving into these apartments like crazy, but you can go to Chick-fil-A and look and see who's in the line. I saw two cars in front of me the other day from California. They're coming in here and paying cash and sticking half of what they sold their house for in California and buying these houses. The average size of the house is $2,600 per square foot. So that equates in, and you average 2.3 kids per family. We've got to provide education for those kids and got to build those schools at a $72 or $110 million, whatever the cost of the school is. So those obligations are there. If not, then we're going to have to lay it at the, we only have, counties are much different than cities because we have very few ways to raise dollars. Most of that is through sales tax. You know, there's we've done well on sales tax, but our hotel motel tax is in the can because of COVID. Nobody's staying in hotels anymore. So we've got that deficit. And people may say, like I used to, well, take care of your own house before you start increasing other fees. I went in last year and asked every department to cut their budget. Give me a needs budget, give me a wants budget. And we basically, I know IT cut over $1.5 million out of their budget. We ended up cutting over $4 million from what we had the previous year. They're cutting to the bone. This year, just 2 weeks ago, I asked every department head to give me a flat budget, no increase. We've seen some increase in our sales tax because of the internet, everybody staying at home. But at the same time, prices have gone up. If you talk to the builders and everybody else, the cost of materials has escalated. The cost of computers has escalated. Everything has escalated. And so we're just looking, we don't want to put a property tax on everyone, but it is one of the only recourses that we would have, but here is something that's already in place that allows the faster growing communities to take advantage of. We're not asking for an increase. All we're getting is the same. It's just when we collect it is the only thing that changes.
And we understand that, and we want to do something to help. It sounds like this legislation would add as much as $4 million each year. And the intuition is if the house being built is bigger than 1,500 square feet, then by charging $1 per square foot, you're going to raise more money than a flat $1,500 tax. If you're getting the money up front, or at least a portion of it up front, and you're not in the tax collection business, then it seems like this is something that would help.
The current law says that we had to give that money to education. Can your bill say capital projects in general? But the reason I'm saying is because it could cause us some budget problems.
I think the more we add to this, the more complicated it's going to get.
Okay. Anybody else? Good? All right, let's move on. Absolutely.
You know, in a negotiation like this, you ask for 3 things and hope you get 2. The third thing that I've always whined about, or opined about, one of the things I've always opined about is the development tax and the private act. The $1,500 back in 1996 and the $1 per square foot was never indexed for inflation, which always grabs me. That $1,500 in today's dollars would probably be about $17.50, and the dollar is probably about more like $1.30 right now. So take that into consideration. You know, a dollar back in 1996 is not $50.
Commissioner Sparks? Dang.
You're right. Commissioner Cush, Commissioner Stevens presented a bill to me. We had legal drafted up, so I've got a caption bill. I need to get with these folks and see, but like Senator Reeves said, it could muddy the waters a little bit, but I agree with what you're saying. It should have been indexed for inflation. Chairman, if I could mention real quick, going back on getting cost under control, I'm just looking here, 2022, $55 million for middle school, $52 million for elementary school near Franklin Road, $58 million to open the school near Walter Hill, Christiana middle school, $69 million. Open another middle school in high growth area located to be announced, to be determined, $57.2 million. And then that, I guess it's Whitworth Buchanan Middle School. When they be open a new high school near there, that's at $109 million. $109 million. One guy that I have a lot of respect for in the around the General Assembly is a guy named Bill Terry. He's a planner. You know Bill, retired planner. He knows more about planning than probably any of us will ever know. But I brought up to him, I was asking for a TASER study, Tennessee Advisory Council on Intergovernmental Relations. Asking for that, I presented the bill. There was an abundance of TASER studies. They only like to take up a few. I did a TASER study when I took on the issue of childhood sexual abuse. We did the study that helped lead to the bill, which eventually got passed, ending the statute of limitations. But what Bill Terry, when we were meeting with TASER, and I said, Bill, is there not a way that we could develop a hybrid model? And this was before COVID and all this. And I said, we're just dealing with all this growth. And it was really ironic. I call it synchronicity. He says, Mike, he says, my granddaughter's over there at one of them schools off the interstate. He couldn't remember the school, and it was Blackman. It was Blackman High School. He says, she goes to school, she reports there, but she's not in a classroom. She studies from home. He said, it works out great for her. That's freeing up a seat. All I'm saying is you got to find 1,000 people that's willing to do that in high growth areas. That helps solve some of your problem. And under my legislation, the county would retain roughly $2,200, so you're up $2.2 million, and you're not having to house all these kids with all this growth. This is unsustainable. And I see Gabriel back there, you got a degree in economics. Charlie's got a degree in economics. I mean, you don't have to have a degree in economics. No, this is unsustainable. There's a lot of things I could just go on. The college debt, nothing's being done about it. The salaries at the universities, that's an issue to take on. No one's going to touch it. Guys over there making $250,000 a year, $400,000 a year, and the custodian makes $22,000. MTSU, $19,000. But look at those salaries. You want to have some reforms, that's where we need to be cutting as well. If y'all will help me take that issue on, I get the county commission behind me, maybe we could get some traction. But I really need y'all to get behind. If y'all can get behind me on another TASER study, we'll request this same study and get them to dig deep, Chairman Harris, because that TASER study primes the pump to get these other legislators to kind of empathize with what we're dealing with. Because it's not just education, as Commissioner Johnson knows. It's that landfill out here. It's that jail. There's a lot of issues out there with infrastructure that is totally unsustainable. But I'm telling you, this bill right here, it's saving millions of dollars. I think it's a no-brainer, but for some reason, Commissioner Rather, it'll get controversial, and people will be fighting it.
Thank you.
Wait and see. Thank you, Chairman.
Sports. Commissioner Stevens, you got the next question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The BEP funding formula is very complex, and I wanted to ask if the state will hold schools harmless with the BEP funding, considering the average daily membership in the past year.
Senator White.
Thank you. In special session, of course, we passed the teacher hold harmless bill, the literacy bill, and the summer mini camps and boot camps and after-school camps that will go on because of the learning loss. But something that was brought up, and it was Senate Bill 7018, was just that, because we understand as a state there was a lot of parents that chose to homeschool their children this year because of the pandemic and the worrying about the spread of COVID. There was a lot of misinformation on attendance, who is counted, who is not. So Senate Bill 7018 that was filed during special session did not get heard, and I believe that it will probably be brought up in regular session. Of course, we start that Monday, and we'll go till we get finished, whether it's the end of April or the 1st of May, and I believe that bill will definitely come back up. I know it's on the governor's radar. He wanted it brought up in special session. The bill was filed. It just was not heard during special session.
Good. All right. Thank you, Senator White. Next will be Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, all sales tax in the county has to be shared with the cities. My question is, would you sponsor or co-sponsor and support support a bill to allow sales tax generated in unincorporated areas of the county to be 100% retained and not have to share it with the cities?
Representative Terry.
Thank you. I appreciate that question. I did ask that question to our legal services, and they did bring up an issue in particular with counties that have their own LEA, have a different LEAs, that, like we have Murfreesboro City Schools. And the way that my understanding is that the way that sales tax is, when it's collected, the first half of it has to go to education, and if there's 2 LEAs within that county, it's going to have to go there. And so their concern was that it would potentially set up a cause of action that that Murfreesboro City could potentially file against the county and the state if we went 100%. You may be talking about different type of legislation or something that may not go directly to that, but that's my understanding from legal services. So it may be something that if you're trying to get that type of revenue, that there's a way that we may just have to work within the legislation or work within the code to ensure that it does not cause that potential lawsuit.
Good. This question I have, this is for me. Most of the people who know me know that I am extremely passionate about the drug issue that we have here in Rutherford County. We had 120 deaths last year. We had 49 suicides. This commission took some steps, although small but significant, where we had put billboards up around the county to bring awareness. And that's one of the things that we are wanting to do, is to bring awareness. And I feel like education is one part, and I think awareness is the other part. And I'd really like to hear from the delegates as to what we can do to help with this problem and to help Rutherford County in its quest to try to bring awareness. Senator White?
And I first want to say thank you to Commissioner Harris for your passion. You have brought awareness to a lot of the residents of Rutherford County because of your passion. So let me just start out by saying thank you. I know this is a very personal issue for you, and I appreciate you're willing to express that and make people aware of that. So thank you. Of course, last year we were not able to fund a lot of stuff we hoped to fund. In March, we had a $2 billion surplus, and by the end of March, when we had shut down the entire state, it was gone. And we wanted to fund more. Of course, but last year, just because of the pandemic, I know the county's feeling the same as the state is. Y'all wanted to do more, but you wasn't sure what your sales tax revenue was going to be. You wasn't sure how long restaurants and businesses were going to have to be shut down. So we had to do a bare bones budget. It was not something we wanted to do, but it was something we had to do to protect the state of Tennessee financially. But in 19, we understood as a state that opioid abuse and mental illness goes hand in hand. And as someone that's very passionate about opioid abuse, you understand that it is a huge correlation between mental illness. And so we were able to fund $5 million for uninsured adults to get mental illness treatment in our state. We also funded $6.2 million for area regional mental health institutes that are still in the state of Tennessee, and we did a $3 million funding for a new facility in the state. Of course, the numbers have come back. Last year, because of COVID, substance abuse is on the rise. As you said, more people are dying of overdose. And so as a state, we are realizing this. We're going to have to look, of course, at this year's budget to see what we can fund to help this problem and to help the mental illness in our state. And so we understand this is a very severe problem. It affects the entire family. When mom or dad are abusing opioids, the kids suffer, and teachers. I'm a former teacher myself. I saw it even, 15 years ago when I taught at Black Fox Elementary right here in Murfreesboro City. I saw where a parent that had an addiction to any sort of drug, how their kid may come to school hungry without doing their homework. It's a problem that is affecting the entire family. And as a state and as a county, we're going to have to address the entire problem. And a lot of times that is a correlation to mental illness as well.
Absolutely. Senator Reeves?
Also appreciate your passion for this. The Tennessee Together that was passed in 2018 with the 3 prongs of prevention and treatment and law enforcement. We were moving the dial. The state was moving in the right direction. But with COVID, it just blew everything up, and all the statistics are moving in the wrong direction as far as overdose and addictions. But one thing I just wanted to kind of throw out tonight is I've had a couple of conversations in the middle of last year with the Narcotics Anonymous groups, similar to the AA groups, but they're the narcotic groups that meet around the state. And you wouldn't think about this, but what this individual told me is they typically meet in groups of 10 or 15 or 20 or larger all over the entire state. But with COVID, the groups could no longer meet because the regular places they normally go would not let them come in because of COVID, the churches in different areas. So he told me in his pool of colleagues, friends statewide, they'd had over 100 overdoses. So I would just suggest in Rutherford County, if anyone's watching this or anyone's listening and wants to open up their churches or open up their homes or open up their businesses for folks who, these narcotic anonymous groups, there's a real need. And that in of itself would just move the dial, providing more support. I don't know if that's a government issue necessarily, but clearly it's something as a county we can find space for these folks to meet.
Representative Terry?
Thank you. And again, Commissioner Harris, I appreciate your passion on this issue, and it's something that obviously as an anesthesiologist, I deal, with patients that have chronic pain and have, and then have acute pain on top of that due to their surgical procedures, and I see what they go through. And patients before they have surgery often will tell their anesthesiologist things that they won't tell any other physician or nurse along the way. And so I see this firsthand. To Senator Reeves' point, we passed the 10 Together legislation several years ago. Statutorily, this year it is due for reevaluation. It's due by November, but I do have, with the suicides and the increase in opioid and the drug issue that we've had secondary to a lot of the problems with COVID, I do have the commissioner coming in front of my committee next Wednesday to discuss this issue along with discussing COVID. The Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, they have over $429 million in their budget for the last fiscal year. They actually, by statute, they sent me out a report on that, and a couple things I can get to you. One is funding opportunities, and the other is potential grants that could be used here in the county. But with that, this is a problem. And we do need to address it head on. I appreciate you taking the bulls by the horns.
Thank you, Representative Teddy. Let me share some with you as well. In 2012, we had 1.5 prescriptions per man, woman, and child in Tennessee. And with the help of these guys, I really want to toot their horn, because last year that number had been it's knocked down so much, so significantly low, and that's because of what y'all done. But y'all all agree that we still got a ways to go. Still have a ways to go. Thank you. This is kind of going into the same question, but Commissioner Reed, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senators and representatives, we do appreciate you being here tonight and taking your time out of your busy schedule being a part of this. Before I ask that question, I do want to mention something to you in particular. On March 13th of last year at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I received an emergency email, as every commissioner within this county did too. And that emergency email told us to meet here in the historic courthouse because a COVID case had been found in Rutherford County. And we met right here. And we brought in all of our emergency individuals, personnel, and whatever, and we started discussing what had happened and what we do from there. Well, we not only discussed it there, we also went into another room and talked about the cost and where it would affect our budget and where we'd go from there. And myself, being chairman of public safety, I had to look at what my individuals who were involved in public safety would be doing, because Public Safety Committee is responsible for our ambulance service, our fire department, our public safety director, our sheriff's department, and all the first responders. From that day forward, those individuals went into what I always liked the term that used to be used at the state capitol many, many years ago from our legislative delegation was, so goes Rutherford, so goes Tennessee. And Rutherford County somewhat used that term, I would have to say, and what they did as far as COVID was here in Rutherford County. Because I have to brag a little bit on our ambulance director of our ambulance department, because he caught himself up late at night watching the news, the national news. You know what he watched? He watched New York City. And he watched what they were doing in New York City, and everything he watched, he said, they're doing it all wrong. It'll not work. And he watched it, and he watched it, and he immediately started making a plan for Rutherford County by watching New York. And every time he went to get something like mask or the covering you needed, he would make those orders, and you know those orders would be diverted from Rutherford County to New York City, and he had to find all the most important ways he could and become very adept into getting these here. And it got to where we would have early morning discussions on how do we find these. And I'm going to say something, the mayor right here found some very innovative ways too to find masks. We were getting directions from CDC and numbers telling us things that, gentlemen, I want to tell you, all of this gray hair hasn't come because of age. And I think Carl, our director, didn't lose all of his hair because of inheritance either, because those numbers would frighten you to death. We found ourselves putting together an emergency forensic center. We found ourselves looking at numbers that would shock any of you, and I'm not even going to those numbers whatsoever. But I don't know if you've ever stood in an emergency forensic center that was hidden because we were afraid we were going to have to use it. I don't know if you've ever done that or not. But I sat up here at night watching our emergency people talking to other emergency people all over Middle Tennessee, and hearing these people talk back and forth. What do we do about this? What do we do about that? Rutherford County's individuals went to different counties and helped them. The problems that were in Sumner County, our people went to Sumner County and helped them move people out of nursing homes because we knew the procedure and the protocol. The state of Tennessee contacted Rutherford County and asked for our protocol because it worked. Our people wasn't getting sick, where in other places they were. And our protocol was adopted by the state of Tennessee's health department and sent to all the other counties across Tennessee. And so goes Rutherford, so goes the state of Tennessee. And the reason I bring that up is that we were already in the process of discussing, wouldn't it be great to have a regional forensic center before COVID had even been announced? Because we were already predicting what would happen in an emergency just like this. And I want to tell you, as a delegation here, we haven't given that up yet. We still think it's something that the state of Tennessee is going to be seeing once this is all over. What do we do? Because you're finding out yourself, if you haven't, you will, that what we have in place right now is not exactly what we need. Because if you'll know, Davidson County run out of room down there, where 40 counties have been taking their bodies for autopsy. They're out of room. And we've had a difficult time here of placing it. The same situation. We're now starting our own toxology lab here. And that toxology lab has given us a little edge up where we can do the toxology report here rather than having to go into a full autopsy, which has given us that opportunity to save the county money, but also to save in this situation and this emergency we're in. And I think that's something to be looked at for what Rutherford County did on their own. And we're very fortunate to have a chairman that, like Chairman Harris here, that has taken this project on that he's just talked to you about. And that project went in further to see if we could do something about it. And that project involved a lawsuit that dealt with pharmaceutical companies. And we have a question. Can we be assured that the Attorney General does not block our settlement with pharmaceutical companies since we have our own lawsuit?
I'll give you a little bit of, the state has sued the pharmaceutical companies, and Rutherford County, we opted out and went to a class action suit. So we have our own lawsuit, and what we're worried about is on while they're doing to settle this settlements, that the Attorney General doesn't want us. They want us to do it with them, and we're wanting to know, is that something that you would be able to help us with or not? I know it's a situation, but we want to know, because the Attorney General wants us to be in there, and we're already in our own class action suit. So we're just asking if y'all know anything on that, how that is going as far as delegates.
So I called the AG's office this afternoon, and they said, Senator Reeves, it's my understanding that Rutherford County is represented by counsel Michael Shalos, and those questions should be directed to him. Thanks.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
Chairman Terry?
Yeah, I was going to say, my office had talked with the AG's office, and they pretty much said the same thing, that they are just in discussions with your legal counsel, and that was as far as they would talk on it.
Mr. Chairman.
Good. Mayor?
The reason this is being brought up, talking with our counsel, the pressure is coming from the AG's office in Nashville wanting us to give up ours so the state could get a larger amount. However, we feel like that we stand a pretty good chance of getting reimbursed, because that's why we chose, even before I got here, that lawsuit was filed to continue on down the path and not join in with the state of Tennessee, because when I was in the Senate, we saw what happened to the tobacco settlement dollars that came in and went in the general fund, and then it let the games begin with politics of who got what from those dollars. So that's why we're standing firm. So protect us from any movement that you see that the state wants to try to take the money in it, because they're starting to make those motions towards some type of settlement. They're getting closer. They've identified who's going to have to pay. Now they're bringing in a lot of the other folks who continue to issue the opioids, like the Walgreens, like the CVS's, the Walmarts, et cetera, and they've now admitted. So the number is going to continue to rise in the total class action settlement. But we just say try to protect our course with our attorneys. Okay, thank you.
Last question of the night. Commissioner Rather?
Thank you all for being here tonight and taking your time to be with us and away from places you'd probably rather be. So my questions real quick, Representative Sparks, I think I already have your answer, so you may not have to answer on this, because I've got it here in front of me, but go ahead if you want to. We know y'all have legislation that all kinds of folks and groups are wanting you to push through. But what is personal to you, each of you, that you're trying to submit or push through this session?
Representative Rudd?
I guess you can start with me and move down. What I've got of the major bills right now, once again, I was getting it far along, but COVID-19 ended our session early, so a lot of things didn't get through last year, and we had to start over again. One of the things I've been pushing for 4 years, and now I've met with the governor and the mental health department all behind it. It's been a 4-year struggle of adapting it. I have written sweeping violent mental health care reform that has been, hopefully it will be in the governor's budget. We've got the costs way down. It would also have been slightly amended so that it would also cover acts of mass destruction, threats. If someone is repeatedly threatened to harm other people or threatens acts of mass destruction, a judge could order them to be evaluated by a psychiatrist to see if they need to be on medication or treatment so they're no longer a danger to the community. That is not in current law, and most states don't have it, which is why all these violent mass shootings and mass acts of violence have occurred. So I'm pushing that, been pushing that for 3 or 4 years, and I think I finally have it where all parties are agreeable to it. Also, as I told you earlier, I've been pushing the first phase. It probably won't be run this year, but I've got it written. The building and infrastructure surplus funds that I'm trying to set up, I'll be pushing that. I've also got some election and campaign finance reform. What was passed on the House last time got cut short due to COVID, and we've made some additions to that. So I'll be having some ethics, campaign finance, and reporting changes to campaigns and elections. Also, one of the most popular pieces of legislation that Mayor Ketron and I ran when we were in the Senate was the Freedom of Speech Act about sign placements. Legal I'm going to have a very minor one-word change to that. There are some smaller cities, none in Rutherford County that I'm aware of. There's some smaller cities that have been trying to use something in the legislation to not enforce it. The legal definition of general election means any election. Under state law, it's not just the November election or the August county election, it's any election. But certain cities have been trying to use that saying the general election, they can abuse people's rights if it's not a November election. So we're just going to change that to elections. So that's minor, but it's a change, and it's been very popular with the public. I'm pushing the Unborn Child Dignity Act about aborted fetuses, how they should be respected and properly disposed of. The restroom sign bill, if that runs, that is especially important now that President Biden has passed an executive order allowing transgenders into bathrooms, the opposite sex, and showers and etc. Which doesn't outlaw that, it just simply states that if you allow that on the premises, if you have multiple people in the restroom, you have to put a warning sign up so people know. Because the sad thing about it is, regardless of transgender rights or anything, there are people with, let's just say, bad intentions, like child predators and rapists, that could be taking advantage of that and be waiting in a restroom for someone. So a warning sign needs to be put up for parents and adults. Also, I've got several caption bills that I carry every year in case they're needed. So they'll show up, but they're not running. They're just there for emergencies. And then I'm also got, we're working right now on Senate and House leadership. They're working with me on some judicial ethics reforms for the courts, and that's all I'm intending to run right now. I have other bills. Now, the House, unlike the Senate, is limited to 15 bills a year. That includes resolutions. So we're limited to what we can carry. And of that 15, I try to get it down to about 12 finally, because there's only so many bills we can carry, especially as a committee chairman. My time's limited. Sometimes we're running between meetings, but that's my agenda right now that I've come up with. It's a combination of fiscal as well as what you'd call social bills, a combination of both. Thank you.
Terry?
That's it. Right. Thank you, Chairman. Great question. Appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about my passion and what we have. The first bill that I will be carrying is Pathway to Prosperity. I was the chairman of the TANF working group, which Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. What we discovered was that Tennessee actually had a recoupment reserve of roughly $750 million to utilize towards needy families. And we get $191 million as a recoupment grant per year as long as we meet a maintenance of effort. And during the last several years, during the Haslam administration and during the Bill Lee administration, we haven't spent that $190 million. And so it's built up. And so the Pathways to Prosperity is a way to help people who are on TANF if they go towards higher education or some degree or towards some, whether they're working in an apprenticeship, something like that, they get an enhanced amount of funding that they get or other services. I've glad to know that the work that we were going to try to do with that last year, COVID derailed it, but the governor has put that into one of his pieces of legislation, so it's going to be an administration bill, and I'm going to be carrying that for the governor. The First Responder Safety Act, currently right now, it's either harassment or terrorism. There's not really anything in between if first responders are being harassed, and that's a risk to all of us if they're not safe in their job. And so what we're looking at, and I think Representative Baum has worked with me on this legislation, so that's something that we're having in between. I'm working with others to help solidify and protect our Second Amendment rights. I'm working on legislation. One of the issues, Kenosha, Wisconsin, where they had the riot, what happened at the Capitol, people that either are paid to riot or come in from out of state to riot. I'm looking at how we can enhance penalties to prevent them from disrupting our communities. There's such a thing as social contagion theory, where somebody might be a peaceful protester, but if somebody is paid to come in, or if it has other ulterior motive, that otherwise peaceful protester now is a felon. And so how do we prevent that? And the last thing that I like to bring out, and this goes back to the question about drug abuse and opioids, and it's something that I never thought I'd really be involved in, and that's dealing with medical cannabis. We are third in the nation in illicit marijuana use, behind California and Kentucky. And roughly 20% of that is due to patients going to the illicit market. And I'm working with others to how can we protect patients here in the state, not smoking, not rec, not towards kids, any gummies or anything like that, but how can we protect them? Because like I said, I see patients that will tell me stuff that they won't tell other folks. This issue is, I'm pretty passionate about it from the standpoint of research on this. People know my story of talking about Alexis Bortel. She was at age 7, began having seizures. By age 9, she'd been on 30 different FDA-approved drugs, and some of them made her worse. Some of them put her in the hospital. They told her she either had to have brain surgery or on a high-powered drug that might kill her liver or her bone marrow, or she could go to another state. She went to Colorado, got enrolled in research there, takes oils. By day 30, she quit having seizures. She's 15 now, hasn't had seizures. It's immoral that we can't get that here in the state of Tennessee. I think that at some point, the UN, they have taken cannabis off the most dangerous list, so I do think that they will probably reschedule or deschedule it at the federal level, and I'm working on legislation to ensure that patients here can get taken care of here in Tennessee.
Thank you. Senator White?
Okay, I know we're running out of time, and we all have families to go home to, so I'm just going to mention 3 that I was very passionate about. Of course, being a former teacher, education is where my heart lies, and so one of the big bills that have already passed this year was the Hold Harmless bill that we passed during special session, and I carried for the administration. And it basically says that schools, districts, and teachers are held harmless no matter what the testing score for the TN Ready comes back. Now, the teacher and the school district and school can choose if it benefits them to use the score. But if it does not benefit the district, the teacher, or the school, they do not have to use the score. And so that has already been passed. Of course, I'm carrying with another education bill, the Tennessee Local Education Capital Investment Act with Representative Baum. Right. And then last year, one of the things that I saw a need with all the deliveries that's happening, and of course that's just increased with COVID, the porch pirate bill. We had that ready to go. It will be brought back this year. It got derailed because of COVID, and we had to recess, and it never got heard. But that will definitely be brought back, and it's probably even more important this year than it was last year, just because of Amazon delivering during COVID. And then I was going over my legislation this afternoon, and I working with TBI and In Slavery Tennessee. Of course, when I started this 8 years ago, I had no clue about human trafficking and what the cost of human trafficking has fiscally on the state of Tennessee. And so every year I've run a human trafficking bill, and again, I've got to even know human trafficking victims through this process. And so I will now say, I didn't think 8 years ago I would tell you my heart and passion lies with victims of human trafficking, but it does. And so this year alone, I'm carrying 3 pieces of legislation on human trafficking, and 2 was brought to me by the TBI because it's just such a problem in Tennessee. And again, 8 years ago, I lived in a bubble and didn't think it was happening even here in Rutherford County, and especially in Tennessee. But it's happening, and it's costing the state of Tennessee, and lives are being ruined. Families are being destroyed. And these victims will suffer the consequences for years and years and years to come, and may never get over the abuse they have taken. So that is where my heart and passion lies, is, of course, education and human trafficking issues after working with In Slavery Tennessee and TBI on the issues.
Let me take the second to return the favor. I had met with you almost 2 to 3 years ago, and you told me how passionate you was about this and how far you've gotten. So thank you, Dawn, and keep up doing that, because I don't think a lot of people, that's the problem with a lot of stuff. People don't know what's going on. They see something on TV, but they don't really know how it affects them every day. And this is really a prevalent problem. So thank you, Dawn, and I appreciate you very much. Representative Baum.
I'd like to mention just one bill. We periodically get resolutions from Rutherford County asking us to address different issues. We read those resolutions. We divide them up so that they get addressed. One that you sent recently calls for a bill that would allow counties who self-insure to also self-insure their fee officers instead of being required to take out surety bonds. We received that, and I'm going to be sponsoring that legislation in the House. Senator Reeves on the Senate side. I mentioned that piece of legislation just so that you know that we do get your resolutions and we try and take action.
All right, let's bring this home. Thank you for doing this tonight. Appreciate the question. Honored to be a senator and represent this wonderful county and to serve with these folks up here in this delegation. It's just really a great honor. I have 35 bills, and I will not be covering them tonight. But I'm on the Commerce Committee, I'm on the Health Committee, I'm on the Ag Committee, so 2/3 of my bills are in health and business, pretty much so. But I won't spend a lot of time on those. But I will say this, and I'll be done. 7% of our state has now been vaccinated, had first dose. At least that's the most recent numbers. I'm showing the number, and Mayor, I might be wrong, it's 3% in Rutherford County. Is that right? And that's, which seems lower than the rest of the state is. So whether you agree with vaccinations or not, the people in the state who want to get vaccinated, whether you're vulnerable, you're older, if you've got comorbidities, we need to find a way over the next few months to do everything we can to try to get this COVID behind us and get some herd immunity, get some better weather, get vaccines to Rutherford County for people that want to get it, and let's get these masks off. So that's something I'm passionate about doing. I sit on the governor's task force for vaccines, and I'll do everything I can to try to help Rutherford in that initiative. And that's not legislation, that's just passion.
Thank you, Senator Reeves. Representative Sparks?
Yeah. Commissioner Rather, thank you for the question. You know, that Opportunity Scholarship Bill, obviously, I think will save this county more money than any bill that's ever been presented. Challenge me on that. Just somebody challenge me. The media challenged me on that. But most important issue I'd say for me is the Constitution. I think it's under attack. I think the First Amendment's under attack. Second Amendment, you can say it's under attack, but if you don't have the First Amendment, you can't talk about the Second. We've got an event at Parkway Baptist Church. Everyone's welcome at 5:30. Parkway Baptist is located on Lee Victory Parkway in Smyrna, right there off I-24, across from Starbucks near Publix is where I attend church. My buddy Marty Luffman's helping to put it together, and Anna King, 5:30 tomorrow night. We'll talk about the Constitution. Second Amendment as well as the First Amendment. Probably something I'm really proud of is something that many of us in this room have worked on for many years is Jefferson Pike widening. We've been talking about it, Mayor, for 18 years. Wheels of government turn slowly. McAdoo, they turn slowly. I've asked TDOT to do if we could do a groundbreaking March 12th. They're saying 2 o'clock. If people want more information, just call my office, 741-6829. But want to thank our school board members. Some of them are here today. Tammy Sharp, Claire Maxwell, Tiffany Johnson, Lisa Moore, and Chairman Corey Young, and Sheila Bratton, and Jim Estes for their work. We're all in this together, and I'm worried where this country is going, folks. Maybe I'm the only one in this room that thinks that. I'm worried. I get upset when I see the media. A lot of it's fake news. A lot of it's fake news. We got some great reporters. I've seen Jason Reynolds was here earlier. Scott Broden, I think, does a good job. But sometimes there's gatekeepers in Nashville. All these bills we've talked about, very few in the media is going to talk about these bills because it's not glamorous. It don't get clicks. It don't sell ads. You know, there's a lot of issues that we need to take on, but I tell you, the more we get away from Christian values, the more this country's going to go to hell. And that ain't from a spiritual aspect. That's from a money aspect. You look at just the fatherless, the breakdown of the family. We can pass all the legislation we want. But until we get to that, and that's not coming from me, that's coming from a judge that called me the other day. I said, how do we turn this around, man? How do we turn this around when we're one of the worst when it comes to third grade readers? And they used to forecast that on prison beds. He said, Mike, until you get a hold of the family and fathers in these households, you're never going to turn it around. This country's what, Gabriel, 30 trillion in debt now? 30 trillion? When I was up here, it was probably 15 trillion. It's sad. But thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. If y'all need me, my cell number is 525-3198. Thank you.
Mayor, real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one request of the delegation before you leave tonight, and it's a passionate plea, but we need your help. All of Rutherford County needs your help. Representative Terry, congratulations. I believe you're the new chairman of Health in the House. Is that correct? Who else is on any health committee in Senate and Health? Sign Up Genius is broken. It's not working. As you mentioned, Senator Reeves, the low percentage. We had 4,000 vaccines last week. And because they keep moving the goalpost 2 and 3 times a day, our health workers, our health department workers are exhausted. They're frustrated. I tasked Cody York and his IT team to put together a software program. The state of Tennessee says they're working on one. They're going to have one, a new one outside of the Sign Up Genius. They're going to have one sometime in March. I'm telling you, March is too late. The software program, we started just last week with his software program. We went over to the Judicial Building. We took over the selection committee room, the juror selection room. We set up a phone bank of 20 phones. The phone bank that they set up actually crashed today because there were so many phone calls being made to people. And we're only doing second round, okay? I sent a text to the governor. I pleaded with him to get with a commissioner to give us the authority to determine our own destiny in Rutherford County. We're the 4th largest county. We need to be putting vaccines in people's arms and not letting them sit in a refrigerator. Give us that opportunity. We will show, as Commissioner Pettis-Reed said, so goes Rutherford County, so goes the state. We will show the state of Tennessee how to do it. We're doing it. LaShawn Dixon is doing a marvelous job. She needs to be our next director. She's interim. She's interviewed. She's picking up the pieces when our director passed away. She's done an excellent job of leading this county. Please help us. The governor hasn't responded. I'm irritated at that. I've asked him, I've begged him, give us that authority to start, give us the vaccines. We'll take care of the people in Rutherford County.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you. I appreciate it. It was pretty long. I appreciate your answers. Appreciate your candor. As chairman, I think it is important that we all work together. It is important that we communicate. 90% of all problems is communication. And if we simply communicate, we'll do well. I want to wish y'all the best of luck. I want to hope that all you get your agenda done. And if I could ever do anything for you, please call me. Thank you. I'm going to take a 6-minute break and let the delegates get down, and then we're going to resume with our regular meeting. Thank you. Got everybody? All right, let's get back in session. We're going to move on to our next on our agenda is Alan Farley here? He's online. It's online? Okay. This is our redistricting discussion, and Alan Farley wants to be recognized. And go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to bring to your attention the 2020 decennial census requires that the 2021 redistricting must be done, completed before the May 2022 election. And so I wanted to make that announcement that we need to go ahead and start that process. This will be my 4th redistricting, the 3rd for Rutherford County. I've helped with the state legislative, congressional, and then also the county redistricting since 1990. And then we're currently at the mercy of the U.S. Census Bureau. I just got word last week that the data will be released 4 months later than what was originally anticipated. So that won't be until August of this year. So, so our goal is to complete this because we'll have a deadline to meet to complete this for this year. The county commission will need to establish this committee to work with the election commission and also the GIS. Of course, these meetings are public. Very time consuming, especially will be time consuming now because of our window is very, very short to complete this. And then also we'll have to follow state and federal laws in completing this. So the deadline to complete this will need to be done by a November county commission meeting for the full commission to be able to adopt the plan. So that way we can put it in place because the date to pull petitions for the first, for the county commission races in the May election will be December 17th of this year. So we're just a few short months away from that process. So we think about it being the 2022 election, but the start of that calendar flips and starts before the end of 2021. So we'll kind of establishing that committee. I've kind of got some recommendations, but I'm just letting the commission know, the steering committee know, so y'all can go ahead and start this process.
How long is the census delayed?
4 months. The original plan was going to be getting it at the 1st of April, and it looks like it's going to be the 1st of August before we get it.
Well, one of the things I have talked with Mr. Farley on is that we need to, as a steering committee, form a committee for this. I was wanting to look at a committee of 7, and that would consist of a Republican and Democrat representative of the Election Commission, the chairman pro tem, chairman of steering, and 2 commissioners and 1 citizen at large. Now, the commissioners will be picked through the steering committee, through application process, so that's unless, you know, we can discuss that. That could change. I mean, it's how you feel right here. But my recommendation is to go with that committee and try to keep it as small as we can, but very informative. And this committee is going to meet several times. So it's going to, like he said, they delayed the census for 4 months, and we got to have it done by November. So y'all can do the math and see where we're at on that. Is there any discussion on that? Do I have a motion to go with this committee? I have a motion from Commissioner Johnson. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Cush. Go ahead. The list is a Republican and Democrat representative of the Election Commission, 2 commissioners, Chairman Pro Tem, Chairman of Steering, and a citizen at large. Alan Farley will also be part of this commission, but Alan will have no voting rights. And Mike Curtis will also be assisting with maps.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Yes, Alan. Will the steering committee process, you mentioned the Republican and Democrat members from the Election Commission. How will those be selected or determined?
It's going to be selected through application like they would a commission going through a committee. So we'll go through that. That is a discussion we can have. If you have any requirements as far as how you want to pick commissioners, we can discuss that right now. But right now, my plan was to go through a application process like we do every other committee.
So the Election Commission would not send their representatives, that would be determined by the county commission?
No, you send a Republican, and you do your own who you send, Republican and Democrat.
Okay.
So we have a motion, we have a second.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions about this. Is this something we have to decide today, or can we make this decision next month? I mean, this is a big decision, and I've thought about this a little bit, but when we did this 10 years ago, there was a lot of political pressure and political influence on that committee. And looking back, I think it would have been much better if it was citizen-driven instead of politico-driven. And so I'm really hesitant. I would like to see us just have more citizens on there and not have the politicians making the decisions about this, so that it's fairer and we don't have to worry about people trying to protect kingdoms and do favors and so forth. That's just me from the experience that we had 10 years ago. And also, I wanted to ask, like when we set up these committees, we always have a surprise at the last minute, but I want everybody to understand whether this committee will be paid or unpaid.
This committee would be unpaid. Everybody understand that? Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. We have a motion and we have a second. So go ahead, Rachel.
Commissioner Cush,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
No.
Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Rather,
No.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Chairman Harris.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Farley. You have anything you want to add?
Well, just get with me, let me know who the appointment process, how y'all gonna work that out, and then we'll get started as soon as we have some information.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. All right, next on the agenda is the county social media policy. We had addressed this last month, but Commissioner Stevens had some questions as to First Amendment, and we have went back to the, so to speak, drawing board. So, Ashley, come up, and Sonia.
So we have simplified this. We kept the internal and external social media policies separate. I'll let Sonia speak to the internal and just a couple of little pieces of language that have changed on that. As far as the external social media policy, we took out anything that had to deal with internal. And the only other thing that was added was talking about was section 1.9. The county may also take steps to remove robo-spam and or comments by social bots. This is an issue that agencies are starting to see a little bit more and more, and so that just gives us the ability to remove those also. Does anybody have any questions?
Everybody have any questions? I have one.
Okay.
So this policy, does it also adhere to county commissioners? So do we have to have this policy and to talk to y'all before we get on there on social media or say anything?
So now the one I'm talking about, I'm discussing is just for external. So it's for people who comment on our county-run social media sites. So it would encompass.
Okay, thank you.
The way Ashley diverted that. So as commissioners, y'all would not be part of the employee social media policy either, because that's related to the employee handbook. Our recommendation is, or my recommendation would be, if you ever have a question, that I would always refer that to Ashley to get advice for that under the professional part of it, as being a representative of the county. Just like the other elected officials, they don't have to ask permission to have their own sites and to make their own comments, but if there's something that's in question, they may want to do that just to get some advice, but not necessarily that they have to. So the county social media policy, when this was brought up, we updated it. In the past, we didn't have a PIO. And so when this was first created some years ago, it was listed that anybody who wanted to do a social media site had to go through the Director of Technology. And so with the update of this, we have requested that if departments want to have a social media site, that they go through our PIO and also the county mayor's office to make sure that it's not going to be impacting the county's site in any way, or that it's not a message that would not be county-centered. So the updates on this was just renaming the position of the Public Information Officer in place of the Director of Technology.
Done? Is there any questions? We are looking for a motion to send this policy to the County Commission. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion from Commissioner Johnson. Do we have a second? Second, Commissioner Rather.
Commissioner McAdoo? Yes. Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes. Next on the agenda is ad hoc committee findings. This, I'm going to make a statement professionally and personally. So professionally, the ad hoc committee found that the policy that is currently in place was found that we did not want to change. It was a unanimous decision. Those included Chris Clark, Public Safety Director, Chairman Pettis Reed, Sheriff Fitzhugh, Sonia Stevenson, and Ed Elam. We discussed and found that the policy of changing the policy would cause harm to the county as far as liability. We also felt that a lot of department heads did not want to do this. They wanted to keep it the same. You can read in the minutes what we said. You can read in the minutes everybody's comments on these. And I know that this is a very touchy subject. I know this is one of those things where things get said that shouldn't. Now, let me be clear, and I want you to understand, and I'm looking at one certain person when I say this. To be criticized, to be ridiculed, that comes with the territory, gentlemen. I'm a big boy, I can handle it. But three things I will not handle. I will not handle anybody trying to threaten my family. I will never let nobody shame someone, and I'll never let somebody be quiet. Now, somebody, and I'm talking to Ed Fields here, so, you know, I have been getting some serious stuff. Do I think it's scary? I don't know. But when you get my family involved, then it all game's on. Commissioner Reed is my good friend. He is somebody that I respect. He does not deserve to be shamed. And the thing that is really upsetting me is that we are for Second Amendment. And I don't understand why you think we wouldn't be. Commissioner Reed is the one who got the sanctuary county implanted, and I'm the one that let it come through steering. I understand it's emotional. But I also want you to understand that there is a lot of people on the other side of this who deserves to be heard. And there's a lot of people that's come forth and want us to not change a policy, but they're scared to death because somebody wants to get in the paper and try to shame them. Now, this is a personal thing. I do not speak for the county commission. I do not speak for this committee. I do not speak for District 15, but I speak for me. And this is unprofessional, maybe perhaps. But when my family gets threatened and when people get shamed, I got a problem with it. And if you don't like it, run against me. Let's move on. Next thing on the agenda is fill a vacancy with the Agriculture Advisory Board. You know, let me go back. Is there anybody have anything to say? I apologize. Go ahead.
Well, I'm glad you backed up. You know, I'm going to the story how it ended up me kind of bringing this forward and pushing it. I've met with folks in Mount Juliet, some other places, and you know, they decide what they want to decide. We decide what we want to decide. But I was looking at what they did, what they didn't do, how they approached it, and everything. There are department heads that do want it. There are some that don't. There are employees that want it. There are some that don't. The employer is Rutherford County. The employer, by state law, has the right to approve or not approve changes to the employee manual. Now, whether a meeting was handled in an inappropriate way and we had to redo it, whether we agreed on 5 people in the ad hoc meeting and there ended up being 6, that's all irrelevant. The employer has spoken. Okay? Can this come up in the future? Certainly, it will. I hope it's not after something bad. But I do want to say as a person, and you know, I hope people are watching this at home, I want to say as the person that kind of started this initiative, Chairman Harris and I don't agree sometimes. Sometimes we do. Chairman Reed and I, Chairman McAdoo and I, anybody in this room, I may not agree sometimes, and I'm going to stick to it. And if I agree with you, I'll stick to that. Robert Stevens, Commissioner Stevens, and I don't agree sometimes. Sometimes we do. Tonight I agreed with him. I don't agree with my wife a lot of times, but we still live together and be married 25 years this year. But I want to make this clear publicly. If those of us that are involved in this initiative or this desire or whatever, right, in my opinion, I do not think it's right. If you drug some of my kids and my wife into it, it's not going to work out real good. I mean, there's a line you can cross, and we've got to take the high road, regardless of what side you're on. Take the high road, grow up, be a man, be a woman, be an adult, and act like it. I'm appalled that somebody's going to bring somebody's family into it. And I'm not talking, I don't even know who it is. I have no idea what happened. But apparently this man's offended. He's gotten some threats, and that's not what this is about. And so I know y'all act like, y'all look like I'm yelling at everybody. Candy, I'm not yelling at you. I'm just, you know, I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm an uncle. You don't bring the family into it. That's just wrong. And I'll end with that.
Thank you. And, you know, it's just not to beat a dead horse. If I offended some people, then, it gets very personal. And I mean, like I said, getting made fun of, ridiculed, and all that, that's part of the job. I mean, that's part of the job. We got to deal with that. So I'm okay with that. It's just when you start putting my family involved, it's a little different story, and it's a little scary at times as well. All right, let's move on. Gentlemen, we got to fill a vacancy in agriculture. Board, Advisory Board. We have one applicant. It is Charles Hord Jr. Is Charles here? All right. Well, gentlemen, we have one application and one opening. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo? Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes. All right, moving on. We had 2 vacancies for the Conservation Board, term to expire 2026. We have Jason Smith, Michael Shirley, Timothy Roger, Tom Beckwith, and William Tollett. I'm going to ask, is Jason Smith in? Jason, come, you're recognized. You come right here, sir. Thank you. Just speaking to the microphone. Absolutely not.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for offering me the opportunity to speak tonight regarding the Conservation Board. My name is Jason Schmidt. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Old Time Pottery, which has been proudly headquartered in Commissioner Johnson's district for the last 35 years. We employ roughly 1,000 people across 11 states, including over 100 folks right here in Rutherford County. I'm guessing most of y'all have shopped in our Murfreesboro store. If not, I'd strongly bet that your spouses and their pocketbooks have. I applied for a seat on the Conservation Board because I believe it's critical for our business leaders to deeply engage in the civic life of the communities where they operate, which I have done throughout my career, including here in Middle Tennessee. Rutherford County's parks and green spaces offer a compelling competitive advantage for attracting corporations and providing superior quality of life for employees and their families. This will become even more important post-COVID as county residents increasingly utilize outdoor green spaces as places to engage in physical activity safely and improve their mental health. The Conservation Board serves the vital role of ensuring the county continues improving upon the high-quality recreation that residents have come to expect for the last 48 years. I believe that I could offer a unique perspective for the Conservation Board as an executive with a strong environmental expertise, a relative newcomer to Rutherford County who routinely utilizes our parks and greenways, a pragmatic business leader who has successfully attracted numerous employees to Middle Tennessee from other regions of the country over the last 18 months, and most importantly, as a citizen committed to working just as hard for Rutherford County as I do for the employees I have the privilege to lead every day. When I originally applied for the Conservation Board, I was under the erroneous impression that either Mike Shirley or Tim Roediger would not be seeking reappointment to the Conservation Board. Serving on the City of Murfreesboro's Cable TV Commission, I know firsthand how challenging it is to find great board members who are committed to selflessly serving their community. From all that I've heard, both Mike and Tim have done a commendable job in their service on this Conservation Board. If that's indeed the case, then I would very happily withdraw my application in favor of their reappointment to the Conservation Board and ask that you consider me for other upcoming Rutherford County Board seats that align with my professional qualifications, as under no circumstance would I want to take the seat of an individual who is doing wonderful work and desires to continue doing that work. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but I'd also want to be highly respectful of your time, as I know this has been a very full evening already for everyone on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Michael Shirley? Is Michael Shirley here? Come on up, Mr. Shirley.
Good evening, gentlemen. I know that you have my application, so I'll let that speak for itself, but one thing that the application can't express is my desire and passion for serving on this board again. I think that over the past 6 years since I've been on the board, we've accomplished a lot of great things and increased the recreational opportunities for our county and our citizens, as well as maintaining and strengthening the programs that we have. So I would appreciate your support for reappointment tonight to the Conservation Board, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Timothy Roger. When you get up here, please tell me how to say your name. I apologize. Roediger, I bet that's it.
It is Roediger. It's an old German name. You don't Good evening, gentlemen. I am looking to continue the good work on this board. I'm about, I think, 6 years into it. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and I'd like to carry on. And if there are any questions, I'll address them right now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your consideration.
Is there Tom Beckwith?
I thank you for this opportunity to be here this evening. I sent a letter to, or attempted to send a letter to members of the steering committee, so I'll save you some time on that. I am very interested in serving in the community. I'm like the gentleman who spoke first time. I did not realize Mr. Shirley was going to be up for this position. I tried for that other position a couple months ago, I guess it was, and so if these gentlemen are doing a great job, I certainly wouldn't want to stop them. I will quote one little quick thing about, you may wonder why I want to serve. I've read this in a book entitled Aging Wisely, and it said, having survived into middle or old age, we should try to give back something to our communities, for that makes our lives more meaningful. And if it's not the right time for me to serve here, I would look forward to the opportunity of serving some other way in our community. And I thank you.
Thank you, sir. And William Tollett. See here? Okay. I don't see anybody. No, sir. Would you like to speak up for him? Nobody's in. All right, gentlemen, we have 5 names. We had 3 spots. No, 2 spots. So what I want to do is I want to vote, and we'll do 3, and then we'll vote for the final 2. Commissioner McAdoo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I heard that a couple had asked that their name be withdrawn.
Okay, which one? Who said that? Jason Smith. Jason Smith? I didn't hear it. I apologize. Who else? Okay, so we had 3 people to vote for 2 spots. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. One of the 3? We have Bill Tollett, Michael Shirley, and Timothy Roediger. So we had 3. Go ahead, Commissioner Rather.
I may have misunderstood, as I usually do. So Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Beckwith, I'd like to know if they are, I know they said they don't want to stand in reappointment's way, but I want to make sure I understood them correctly, if they are withdrawing.
Yeah. Mr. Smith, are you withdrawing? Okay. And Mr. Beckwith, are you withdrawing your name?
I did mean to withdraw, but I mean, I don't, Mr. Shirley and Ms. Gilman, I don't want to get in their way, but no, I'd love to serve. I mean,
okay.
You want me, I'll gladly do it.
Okay. So we have 4 people for 2 spots. We're going to vote for 3, and then we're going to vote for 2. Everybody understand? The names are Bill Tollett, Michael Shirley, Tommy Roediger, and Tom Beckwith. Those are your 4 choices. Go ahead, Rachel. 3 names.
Shirley, Beckwith, Roediger.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Stevens,
Shirley, Roediger, and Beckwith.
Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Rather,
Shirley, Roediger, Beckwith.
Commissioner Johnson,
Beckwith, Tollett, and Rediger.
Commissioner Reed,
Shirley, Beckman, and Tollett.
Chairman Harris.
Shirley, Roediger, and Tollett. I mean, we got. Yep. No, or who is it? Are you serious? We have a tie. What a night.
So vote for two, because there's two.
So we're voting for two, just two.
Was it a three-way tie, or?
It was three, yeah, no, it was a three-way
Yes,
tie?
three-way tie.
Three-way tie. We're voting for two. Whenever you're ready.
Mr. McAdoo. I'm sorry, Shirley and Commissioner Rather,
Shirley and Beckwith.
Commissioner Johnson.
Beckwith and Tollett.
Tollett is not one of them. Did he say Beckwith and?
Tollett. The three names are Michael Shirley, Timothy Roediger, and Beckwith. So it's those three. Tollett is not in. Beckwith, Roediger, and Shirley.
Beckwith and Rediger.
Yes. Commissioner Stevens,
Shirley and Beckwith.
Commissioner Cush,
Shirley and Beckwith.
Commissioner, excuse me, Reed,
Shirley, Beckwith.
Chairman Harris.
Shirley and Roediger.
Shirley and Beckwith.
Shirley and Beckwith. You will be recommended by the steering committee. You don't have to be there, but we're going to be voting at the county commission. If you're one of those three, it does not mean that you can't be brought up by a commissioner. So a commissioner can bring you up in the county commission to vote on you again. So if you didn't get it, you can still find a commissioner who will nominate you. All right, let's move on. We need to announce one Public Building Authority vacancy, term to expire January 2022. This is to fill the remaining term of a retiring member. So I'm announcing that. If you're interested, get your application in to the mayor's office. All right. Excuse me? It doesn't say.
Smith. Leslie Smith.
Leslie Smith. All right, now we're going to go back to the County Powers Act. So you have heard our delegates, you have heard what they're wanting to put through, and I know that some of y'all have some questions. Senator Reeves and Representative Baum would like a okay from us, a recommendation from this committee, as well as a recommendation from the county commission. And I'm going to recognize Robert. I'm going to go ahead.
Okay, first, I had a couple of questions. If we decide we're moving to this County Powers Relief Act instead of our current development tax, I think we have to have that private act repealed. And I'm going to read you what the statute says. It's the very last sentence of it. It says, a county levying a development tax or impact fee by private act on June 20th, 2006, which would include us, shall be prohibited from using the authority provided in this part, which is the County Powers Relief Act, so long as the private act is in effect. So if we're going to switch, we need to also ask our legislators to repeal this private act that lets us do the development tax. And I don't think we can switch and start collecting the County Powers Act relief tax until our private act is repealed. That's my reading of the statute. Maybe Mr. Christensen has a different explanation or understanding of it than I do. I do think we need to make the switch. I think we're going to collect more revenue from it over time. And I think we need to also ask our legislators if they will put in their bill to open it up for any capital projects and not just education capital projects. It sounds like they're on board with allowing us to collect half on the front end and half on the back end. I hope that they would be okay with letting us use the funds for capital projects in general and not just education capital projects, because that could really throw a wrench into our budgeting process. And so I'm prepared to make a motion, but I don't want to do that until everybody else has had their questions and concerns addressed.
I'll come back to you. Has anybody got anything? Everybody good? Commissioner Stevens, back to you.
Okay, so it's actually going to be two motions. And so the first one is going to be a motion to express a commitment on behalf of the Rutherford County Commission that we will opt into the County Powers Relief Act adequate facilities tax if our legislative delegation sponsors a bill and passes it that allows the adequate facilities tax to be collected 1/2 at the time of pulling the building permit and 1/2 when the certificate of occupancy is issued. And also if the legislation allows for the funds to be used for capital projects in general and not just education capital projects.
So are you wanting to do this two motions, or are you wanting to put this all together?
Well, that's the first one. I think we need two separate motions. I think we need one to repeal the development tax we have, and I think we need one to express our commitment to opt into the adequate facilities tax when the development tax private act is repealed.
Okay, we'll start with that one. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second from Commissioner Cush. Any discussion? Go ahead, Rachel.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Cush,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Chairman Harris.
Yes. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, and the second motion is simply to ask our legislative delegation to begin the process of repealing the current private act that allows us to have the development tax.
Mr. Chairman, may I interject on that motion from a legal perspective?
Go ahead, Nick.
From a legal standpoint, it may be a bit premature to start that process, because as I understand it, we're only electing to opt into the County Powers Relief Act contingent upon the General Assembly making the changes as described by Mr. Stevens. And it may be that they can't garner enough support in the General Assembly to make those changes. And if they don't, I would be hesitant from a legal perspective of having repealed your development tax and not know that you've gotten what you want from the General Assembly, because once you repeal it, you'll never be able to get it back.
Mr. Stevens, you want to amend your motion?
Well, they have to sponsor the bill by February 12th, do they not, to get it?
Yes.
If we don't start the process now of asking them to put a bill in the hopper that repeals the private act, and they don't get to do that until next year, then we won't get to opt into the adequate facilities tax until next year when they repeal the private act. So if somebody would just sponsor a bill and have it as a placeholder, and we can see how the process moves along, they can always scuttle the bill or drop it, and we don't have to vote to, I think we have to vote by 2/3 to repeal it. So if we don't start the process now of them putting that in the hopper and moving it along, then we won't be able to opt into the adequate facilities tax until sometime in mid next year.
Okay. Mayor?
I don't think they'll have thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think they'll have a problem of dropping a caption bill that opens a caption, but it's very narrow anyway, the caption that just allows us to opt out and do away with our private act. I don't see them having a problem in doing that.
Okay.
Mayor, do you think, based on your experience up there, that there could be language placed in that the opt-out of the county is contingent upon them passing the requested changes from our other resolution that's being sent up there?
Well, because it's going to take two different bills, because the first one is changing a little bit of the language of the current bill and its statewide application compared to our private act. So they can drop a second bill that opens that caption up and allows us to opt out. But they could wait till this one passes before they sign and die, and sometime in April or 1st of May, and then pass that one, because it's a local, nobody will stand in the way of us getting rid of a tax.
I just would want to make sure that they won't pass that second bill that repeals our private act.
Without anything. That would be devastating, and we'll never be able to come back, like you say, and get that.
One final point, just know that the state law that governs the County Powers Relief Act expressly states that in order for any county to opt into it, it has to be approved, that opting in has to be approved by 2/3 of a county commission on two consecutive separate sessions. So, assuming that you have your private development tax repealed, and further assuming that the General Assembly in July amends the state law as what we've requested, we still have to come back under state law on two separate consecutive commission meetings and approve by a 2/3 vote at each meeting to actually opt in to the County Powers Relief Act. That still would have to happen.
Yeah, that's correct. And when I talked to Representative Baum today, he mentioned that as well. And of course, the majority of our delegation, they won't really carry anything on our behalf. That's the way it was when I was there. As long as I had a 2/3 vote, whether I agreed with it or not, I would carry the piece of legislation from the full commission. If I had a 2/3 vote by the commission, I would introduce the bill and carry it. So.
The only suggestion I would make in that second resolution, assuming this commission or committee passes it forward, is that in the resolution that it state that the repeal of the private act is contingent upon the other requested changes made by the county at its February 11th commission meeting, assuming that passes.
Mr. Stevens?
I'm okay with amending or clarifying the motion to say those things. We certainly don't want them to repeal the private act and leave us with nothing. But I think the understanding that I got from it was that they're willing to help us do this, and I don't think they're going to try to repeal a tax and leave us out in the cold. So, but if we need to clarify the motion, just ask them to open the caption bill and sit on it until the other thing is determined one way or the other. I would be fine with doing that too. I just want them to begin the process so that we can get that done this year and not have to wait until March or April of next year to switch.
Okay, repeat your motion, Commissioner Stevens.
The motion will be for our legislators to start the process of repealing the private act by opening the caption bill and taking no action on it until the County Powers Relief Act issue is decided one way or the other.
Okay, do I have a second?
Robert, I'm not sure I like the very last thing you said about one way or the other. It should be that the Powers Act is approved as the county has brought it forward.
Oh, that's fine. That was poor wording on my part. So it approved to our satisfaction.
Right. Okay. Then I would second that motion.
Okay, I have a second. Go ahead, Rachel.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Cush,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Chairman Harris.
Yes. All right, gentlemen, you see your litigation list. Is there any questions? Moving on, is there any other business? Since there's none, we're adjourned.